Great. Why don't we start with some news first? We had a lengthy conversation last week about how news doesn't break on the show, and then 1 hour before the show, we get the big breaking news that was expected for the last several years in different locations, different occasions. But Jim Harbaugh is making his trip back to the NFL. He will be the new head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, it's officially official. I mean, as official as it can be without, the introductory press conference, as we've seen from Josh McDaniels and the Colts in the past. But I don't think anyone's expecting that. Everyone's expecting him to now be the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. And I am very excited to see how people feel about that overall. I think he's been a very hot candidate for a number of years now, but I think his time in the NFL was probably a little more controversial than maybe
Hmm.
some are making it out to be. The last time around, obviously, he was paired heavily with Colin Kaepernick and, his career as a whole in San Francisco. But regardless, it's very exciting as a football fan, and I'm excited to see, what the kind of next step holds for that organization.
I agree. He leaves the opportunity to be the highest paid college coach ever for this opportunity. Obviously, amidst a season of scandal in Michigan with violations from the NCAA rules. But the brothers are both back in the NFL. The brothers who may have a chance at both being champions at both the college level and NFL level in the same year. Either way, am with you on curiosity to see how well this lands. I don't know how it has landed yet, considering it's only been an hour, but I'm curious to see how well it goes over with Chargers fans. In other news, Vic Fangio is out, I guess a mutual parting as the Miami defensive coordinator. I do want to read a statement from Miami. I think it sheds a little bit of light on there. It came from Coach Mike McDaniel, who says, I want to thank Vic for his contributions in 2023. When we assessed this season, it became apparent that this was the best path forward for all parties involved. Now we turn our focus to 2024 and beyond with urgency as we identify the best candidate to lead our defense moving forward. We remain steadfastly committed to the development of our players and to building a winning team with sustained success. This seemed like a shock to many, even a lot of NFL insiders. I think the Miami defense underperformed later in the season, but I don't think many saw this move coming.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not overly shocked, in large part because of the news that was immediately following it from Adam Schefter, which is basically saying that he's expected to land in Philadelphia. That's for numerous reasons. The one being that he's gonna, he's from the Philadelphia area. He wants to be close to the family, which is in the Philadelphia area. And there was a lot of interest in him coming to Philadelphia last offseason as a defensive coordinator. Obviously, that didn't work out because Jonathan Gannon is a liar who lies and just kind of screwed the Eagles organization. And the Cardinals had to give up a third-round draft pick for that. But here we are. The Eagles find themselves needing a defensive coordinator, and I kind of think this is already done. I think that Vic Fangio probably asked for his release from the Dolphins when it was announced that the Eagles would not be retaining Matt Patricia and or Sean Desai. Basically, saying, hey, I want to go there. I want to be closer to home. This is what I wanted to do last offseason, but here we are a year later.
Yep. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, a lot of good candidates still left out there. But Joe Barry, another defensive coordinator who is out, he's out in Green Bay. This one seemed fairly expected. Green Bay rode middle of the pack in defense all year, or even a little bit lower than middle of the pack all year. I saw this. I mean, not just me, most saw this coming for a couple weeks now. I think the playoff run put a little bit of blinders on for the past couple of weeks, like forgetting that he was kind of going to be out. But once their playoff run ends, he is officially out as defensive coordinator of the Packers.
Yeah, 100%. No shocker there. But good for the Packers. They're in a good position. Yep. They've got a very young team. So,
yep. We have two hirings for head coaches. That would be, or 3 now with Harbaugh, sorry. Titans hire Brian Callahan as head coach. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. A weird. I feel like normally when you hire an offensive coordinator, and for those who don't know, he was the offensive coordinator for the Bengals for the past few seasons, under their head coach, um, Coach Taylor. And I mean, I guess you can point to the success of their backup quarterback after Joe Burrow went out and say, he worked wonders with him and all that kind of stuff. It's just typically, I feel like when you see an offensive coordinator get pulled from another team, it's due to, that team having just a blow up offensive year. Think Shane Steichen and the Eagles last year. Those are typically the type of coordinator hires that you see
It's
happening.
the same way Slowick is getting a lot of interest this year from the Texans.
Because you greatly outperform expectations, or you lead the league in everything. And I think Brian Callahan is absolutely deserving because he did do a lot. He did do very well with Jake Browning as their quarterback this season. So it's a very interesting hire. I can't say I know a ton about him. But I think it's going to be really important to look at how they build out the staff around him. I don't think they do this if they don't think that he is going to mesh well with Will Levis. So, yeah, it's going to be really interesting. You and I have talked about 1,000 times. I'm just intrigued to see how they approach their offseason as a whole, the Titans organization, that is.
That's where I was going. I think it's interesting hiring an offensive-minded coach as your head coach when you still have a lot to build up on this offense, especially with the talk of Derrick Henry no longer being there, like that being a very real possibility. So, yeah. Yep. Anyway, next. Raiders hire Antonio Pierce as head coach. Nothing but praise for this one from everyone, especially from within the Raiders organization itself. The players have went on a lengthy campaign for Antonio to be the new head coach of the Raiders. In every facet, social media, regular media, everywhere you can imagine, the players have been hyping him up and basically saying like he is the embodiment of what it means to be a Raider, and I don't want to be here if he's not hired. So they go ahead, they hire him as the head coach, and it's interesting to see this new wave of former players getting head coach opportunities in the past couple of years, but we see a lot of that happening now. I think this is going to be interesting to see how well he transitions from interim head coach. You and I have talked a lot on how it changes, even though you're being a head coach, going a whole NFL season, 18 weeks of an NFL season, and the ups and downs of that, rather than and being an interim head coach doesn't come with a lot of pressure. The pressure is just finish this season as best as we can, not we have a goal, a dream of a Super Bowl, and you have the whole off season and season to get us there. So I think that is going to be interesting to see how well that develops for him. Along with that, the Raiders did hire Tom Telesco, who was the former Chargers general manager, as their new general manager.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You don't really see GMs just kind of get a second shot like that very often. And, I think there was a lot of things that have kind of gone awry in Los Angeles for the Chargers of recent years.
Yep.
Tom Telesco is certainly to blame for some of that. A GM has to be. I don't think it was, entirely his fault. So I'm intrigued to see him get kind of a second lease on life, a second chance. You just don't see it very often with GMs in the same way that you do coaches. But yeah, I just it's going to be really interesting because not only do we not see interim head coaches, I think, take over very often. Although, fun fact, I'm pretty sure Dan Campbell was an interim head coach for the Dolphins 15 years ago or something. Maybe it's probably shorter than that. It feels like forever ago, but I'm pretty sure that's a thing that happened once upon a time. But you don't often see the head coach, the interim head coach, get hired as the head coach. It just doesn't happen. He was. What year was it?
2015. He was the Miami Dolphins interim head coach following organizational changes when he took over a 1-3 team that had lost 3 consecutive contests and immediately helped the team win its first 2 games under his leadership.
Yeah. So
that was early in the season.
Yeah, that's really early.
Really early.
I feel like that's what's going to happen to Dallas next year. Mike McCarthy after 4 games. But yeah, it's just it's going to be interesting because I feel like even sometimes when you do have that interim guy that takes over, like the one that comes to the top of my mind is Jason Garrett taking over
Mhm.
for Wade Phillips back in God knows when that was, like 08 or 09 or whenever. Maybe earlier than that, I don't know. But he was kind of already sort of pegged as that guy a little bit. Like Antonio Pierce, I don't think if you had asked when they fired Josh McDaniels, like, oh, do you see any head coaches on this staff, like right here, right now, if you had to
Mhm.
name one? I don't think they would have been naming Antonio Pierce necessarily.
No.
So you can look at that at two ways. There's kind of pessimistic and an optimistic way to look at it. Pessimistic being, well, he had a great run because he's a player's coach and the guys love him and that's
Mhm.
awesome. How does that change when it's a full season? Or the optimistic is he did a lot with not a ton of talent, and maybe that's signs of things to come. I'm not one to
Mm.
say which one it is. It's just going to be very interesting to watch turn out. Watch them figure it out.
Mhm.
I think Mark Davis really regrets what he did a year or 2 years ago, whenever that was, when they didn't hire the other interim head coach that everybody liked, who finished the season very strong after Gruden. And I think he's trying to fix that mistake. So we'll just see how it goes.
Agreed. I think I'm interested to see what they do with the quarterback position. I mean, there's a lot to watch out for those
Yep.
this season, but they obviously had Jimmy G. Jimmy G got hurt, and then Aiden O'Connell ran out the rest of the season. Tom Telesco was obviously there when the Chargers got Justin Herbert. So I think it's just that's a huge point of emphasis for me, and seeing what they do with the talent that they do have there, especially with everything that happened with Josh Jacobs in last offseason and contract negotiations and stuff. So from like a roster management type of idea, I'm curious to see how well Tom and Telesco and Pierce work together to build this roster up.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Jimmy G's even going to be under contract. I mean, they take 15 million in dead money if they cut him as a post June 1 with $12 million cap savings. If it's a pre June 1, they get basically no savings and it's 28 mil in dead money. So very interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah.
But I agree. Quarterback is going to be the big question, as it is for like 70% of franchises.
Yep. And it seems Nick Sirianni is remaining the head coach of Philadelphia after hearing MP Duncan's long rant last week about how it was possible, but also in the middle of our show saying it may be possible he leaves. He is staying.
Yeah, after the meeting that seemed to never happen, and then like you don't truly get it unless you're following the Philadelphia sports scene as closely as I am and other fans are. But like we were just waiting for this Nick Sirianni Jeffrey Lurie meeting to happen because that is what's going to tell us whether or not he's staying on. It's not the meeting with Howie Roseman where they're trying to figure out who might be coordinators. It's really like what's going to happen in that meeting with Jeffrey Lurie. Is he going to like what he hears or not like what he hears and get rid of him? And nothing was ever announced, which it means, after they scheduled a press conference for the end of the season with Nick and Howie, that told us all we needed to know. He is going to be the head coach. They did, as was previously mentioned, they did release Sean Desai. Matt Patricia was a free agent, and he's gone. I'm saying that as if they're players, they're coaches. And they have relieved Brian Johnson of his duties. They have fired him, even though he did get a couple head coaching interviews. But yeah, they're currently interviewing offensive coordinator candidates, including Cliff Kingsbury, along with some other prominent names from both the NFL and the college scene. So, wahoo, I guess.
Yay.